When you think of first responders, you probably picture EMTs, firefighters, and police officers. But there's always a first responder behind the scenes who handles things before any of them get involved, the 911 dispatcher. And while they're usually not the ones who get the credit for being out there on the front line and saving the day, it's up to them to ensure that the right information gets to the right people, and also to try to keep the 911 callers as calm as possible in difficult and sometimes terrifying situations. My name's Christian, and I've been a 911 dispatcher for 25 years now. And as I'm nearing my last day on the job, I've started thinking back to some of the most memorable calls that I've answered, and there are a few that have stuck with me throughout the years. When I first started this job, there was always one type of call that I dreaded getting. I'd only been working at the dispatch center for a few months when I pick up the phone one evening and it's a gentleman who is completely hysterical. All I can hear is a woman screaming in the background, sounding like she's in agonizing pain. My heart starts to race as I continue to ask over and over,
"Sir, what is your emergency?"
This isn't the type of job where you can just take your best guess as to what's happening on the other side of the line. It could literally be anything. Domestic violence, just a concerned citizen who stumbled upon an accident, or an attempted murder. A million different scenarios are running through my mind at that very moment. Then I just ask,
"Is there someone else there that I can speak with?"
I alert the police and paramedics, but I don't even know what to tell them the problem is. Finally, the woman I heard screaming gets on the phone, barely able to talk through the pain, but she manages to tell me that she's in labor and that her water broke. They have no transportation to get to the hospital, so they need an ambulance. Then she begins to apologize, saying that her husband is a little nervous because this is their first child. I smile and put her on hold so that I can relay that information to the paramedics. Once I return, she's screaming again. I don't interrupt, I just wait until she's through, then ask,
"How far apart are your contractions?" "3 minutes."
She replies. I know from experience with my own wife that she's practically about to give birth. I want to ask, why did you wait so long to call for help? But obviously I know that's not very professional. So I just assure her that help is on the way and that they should be there very soon. After only a minute and a half passes, she has another contraction. I quickly check in with the paramedics to see how far out they are, and they inform me that they are about 10 minutes away. The man and woman live right in the middle of New York City, and I think that everyone knows how bad the traffic is there. So I tell the woman to put her husband back on the phone, and thankfully he's calmed down some now. And then I begin to walk him through what he would need to do if the baby came before the paramedics arrived. I explain that he needs to have his wife lie down, so he tells her to get into the bed. Not even 30 seconds later, he starts screaming,
"I can see the head. Oh my God, it's coming. The baby's coming now."
I tell him that he needs to get some clean towels or blankets, and he says, hold on. Then I hear him running. Just as he returns, I can hear him and his wife talking to each other. He's telling her to push, and then a moment later, I hear the sound of a baby crying. Then the man gets back on the phone and tells me that they had a little girl. He's crying too. I'm just about to start explaining how to cut the umbilical cord when he tells me that the EMTs are there. Then he thanks me, and I remember wanting to ask him what they were going to name the baby. But everything was so hectic, I ended the call, just thrilled with how things turned out. But of course, not every 911 call has such a happy ending. Sometimes dispatchers answer the calls of family members of recent homicide victims or people who are hiding from an abusive partner. Many calls are traumatic, and not a lot of people know this, but when you apply for this job, they tell you right off the bat that 911 dispatchers are at risk for PTSD. I know I never knew that before I started working as one. Very few members of the public know the ins and outs of this job. A lot of the news stories that you see on TV or read in the papers are all about the bad stuff that happens in dispatch, but there's always more to the story that isn't provided. I remember a call that another dispatcher answered once where the caller had been kidnapped. The kidnappers found out that she'd called the police, so they tossed her phone out the window, and then the dispatcher was unable to get someone to that location fast enough. The girl was never found. She's still missing to this day. There are so many different factors to every single call, And a lot of times, if things don't turn out right, so much of the blame goes on dispatch. Another call that I can recount, but is very hard for me to talk about, is one that I answered on a spring morning back in March of 2003. What I remember so vividly about that particular day is that I wasn't even supposed to be on duty. I had come in to work some overtime. One of the other dispatchers was away on their honeymoon, so they took a week off. My first call comes in, and it's a passerby reporting a car accident on the highway, which is nothing out of the norm. I get calls like that on almost a daily basis. So I dispatch an officer, who just so happens to be a friend of mine, and his partner out to the scene to figure out what's going on, thinking that they'll just need to take an accident report. Then about 6 minutes later, the phones start ringing off the hook all throughout the dispatch center. I answer my call and immediately hear,
Officer down! Officer down!
protocol is that if there's ever an officer down, every other officer on duty gets sent out there. So I attempt to contact the officers that I just sent out to the accident call to tell them that that's going to have to wait. I need them to turn around. But I can't reach them. I keep trying, not realizing the reason why they're not responding. Then finally it hits me. One of them must be the officer down. To make a long story short, it was a traffic fatality. There was a woman. She'd been out drinking all night and was on her way home, probably to sleep it off, when she blindsided the officer. His injuries were just so severe that he didn't make it. His partner was hurt pretty badly too. He had to leave the force. I know it's not my fault. I mean, obviously it's entirely that woman's fault. But I can't tell you how many times I've revisited that day and thought maybe if I just hadn't been the one to answer that call and send them out there. I've had to process my way through it and tell myself that life is inevitable. Some things are just meant to happen. It sucks that I just so happen to be a part of it. Another call that comes to mind really shook me to my core. It was a very unfortunate call. A man phoned in and gave me his address. He said that he wanted to report a suicide, and then he gave me a second address, which he said was his sister's home. I didn't understand what was going on at first, so I asked him, trying to clarify.
Sir, I'm sorry, but which address did it happen at?
He replied,
It's getting ready to happen now.
and then at that point, I hear a gunshot. I was trying to type in the code for a medical call to let the paramedics know that they were needed, but my hands were shaking so badly that it took me a minute to get it together. I asked my coworker sitting next to me to replay the call, just the part at the end where I was sure the man had just killed himself. I mean, I knew what I had heard, but I just wanted to make sure. As she played it back and I heard it again, I snapped back into reality and realized that I'm still on the line. So I asked,
Sir, are you still there? Can you hear me, sir?
I keep repeating it over and over, but there's no reply. Finally, I hear the first responders in the background, so I hang up. I never expected that. I don't think any dispatcher does. You assume people are calling in because the emergency has already occurred and now they need help. My supervisor called me into the office and told me to take the rest of the day off. We're trained with how to deal with suicidal callers, but I didn't even have the chance to intervene and try to change the man's mind. He shot his sister's husband at her home, and then he drove to his house and shot himself. The motive was revealed to be that the man found out his brother-in-law was having an affair, and when he threatened to tell his sister, he was fired from his job. It turns out that his brother-in-law was also his boss. After that, my family moved to Pennsylvania, and I transferred to a new dispatch center with the hopes that things would be less tense and hectic. And they were, until a few weeks ago when a call came in that I don't think I'll ever forget. This call just did something to me that no other call has ever done before. After answering this one particular call, and then the chain of events that played out after that, just made me realize that this job is taking a toll on me. It has been for a while now, but for some reason I've just now started to notice. I go home thinking about the people I talk to each night and what happened to them after the call ended. Sometimes I find out later from some of the first responders, or I see something on the news, but then other times I don't. And when I don't, it eats at me. If it didn't, then I must not be human. So I was working the night shift. It was around midnight, and a call comes in from a young woman.
911, what's your emergency? Help! Somebody please help me! Miss, what seems to be the problem?
She sounds out of breath, like she's running, and I can tell that she's terrified.
He's after me. I was walking home and he just started following me. Where are you now? I don't know. I'm still running away from him. I made a wrong turn or something. I'm lost. Is there somewhere you can hide? The police won't be able to find you unless I have an exact location. No. He's not too far from me. He'll see me. Okay, calm down. Well, are there any street signs around you that you can see? No. Please hurry. You have to send someone now. Don't worry, miss. Help is coming. Now, what about landmarks? Do you see any of those? No, I don't see anything. I'm in the woods now. I'm trying to find somewhere to hide. What about the GPS on my phone? Can't you track that? I'm pulling that up now, miss. Now, as soon as you hear the sirens, you run toward the sound of them, alright? Okay.
That's when I hear something that sends a chill right through me.
What was that?
I ask, but she's too busy screaming again now to answer.
Miss, calm down. You've got to let me know what's happening there. I don't know. It sounded like a bear growling. But I think it's coming from the man. Oh my God! What is that?
She yells and then starts screaming for help once again.
The police are almost there.
I tell her, even though I know they're not. I just checked in with them and they've informed me that they can't find the girl. They're driving through the area near the tower that her phone last pinged off of, but they said that there's no sign of her. So I tell her,
I need you to try to find your way back to the main road. It'll be easier for the officers to spot you. They've alerted me that they're in the area. Do you hear the sirens? No, I don't hear anything.
Then suddenly I hear the sound of heavy footsteps approaching, and I can tell that she started running again.
It's coming. Please help me. It's going to kill me. You've got to help me. I'm trying, miss.
I say, frustrated. A slight realization comes into play when I notice that she's gone from referring to her pursuer as he, and now she keeps saying it.
Can you describe the attacker to me? It's big. It's really big. I thought it had some kind of a fur coat on, but the closer it gets, I can see that it's not a coat.
I'm not understanding what she's trying to tell me.
If it's not a coat, what is it then?
Hearing her phone shuffling back and forth tells me that she keeps looking behind her.
I don't know. It's just a part of it.
She pauses for a moment, then continues.
And it has white eyes.
I sit there for a few seconds in silence, extremely confused.
What do you mean, white eyes? There's no pupil or anything there. It's just all white. Is there anything else you can tell me? I don't know if you can hear it, but it keeps growling at me. I don't know. It sounds like a bear or something.
Suddenly, she lets out another blood-curdling scream.
It's running. It's on all fours now. Please help me. It's coming. It's right behind me now.
Then she starts screaming, "Oh my God," over and over.
Are you alright, miss?
I keep asking, but get no reply. Finally, she answers.
I think it's gone now.
I try to calm her down.
Okay, miss, breathe. Calm down. Everything's going to be alright. I can hear the sirens now. Do you hear them? Yes, I can hear them. And I can see the lights through the woods. Oh my God, thank you so much. I thought I was... Holy shit! It's back! It's right in front of me. Miss, what's going on? It's doing something now. What is it doing? Can you get away? What is that?
I hear her say, but in a low voice like she's talking to herself. Then she shouts,
It has wings!
I can hear the flapping of what sounds like wings and then unrecognizable grunts in the background. And not before long, I hear the screams that will haunt me for the rest of my life. I sit there in shock and anticipation because I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm hoping that she'll pick the phone back up, but she never does. Early the next morning, just as my shift is about to end, I run into one of the officers who was dispatched to the scene the night before, and he tells me that it was very weird. One of the people from the forensics team told him that they never seen anything like it before. It looked like from the damage that was done to her body from the impact, she'd been dropped from somewhere as high as the Empire State Building. I reply, but she was on the ground running. Not from what they say, and that's not even the weirdest part. What? I reply, overly curious, hooked on every single word he has to say. There weren't any buildings anywhere around for at least 2 miles. And if she fell from one of the surrounding trees near the road, it wouldn't have done that type of damage. She would have only had a broken bone or two. That was the day I put in my 2 weeks resignation and started looking for houses back in New York City. I think it's safe to say that the hectic environment of the big city isn't as bad as the ominous silence of the vast country. Don't forget to subscribe for new stories weekly. See you next time on
Nina's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.